And the next talk will be Associate Professor Bo Chan from Ball State University, Indiana, telling us something about social networks in the learning community. Very warm welcome to you too. Excited to hear what you have to tell us today. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. So this is our final presentation. Just speak a little bit, and we'll be over. So since this topic is about social network, I want to just know a little bit about you. So tell me, introduce about yourself and your interests, and how you associated with this topic.
Sure. So again, Shelby Rodriguez. I oversee public affairs at Lamar University, and I have a strong background in overseeing social media, and so that's why I have the interest in.
Good, thank you.
I'm Dr. Elise Jordan, head of engagement, research engagement and learning at Lamar University. Social media is something, an initiative that I want to see used more heavily within the library to promote activities in our collection.
Okay. I'm Maren. I'm head of PhD didactics at Babel. It's a self-paced language learning app. And we're big in social media, but for us it's super interesting because self-paced means self-study, so social media gives us the chance to interact with our learners.
Yes.
Well, and I'm Tom. I'm in the Danish defense, and I'm a development director trying to reach out to all the soldiers.
That's great. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Suzy. I'm just graduated from Teachers College, Columbia University, and my major is early childhood education. Yeah, but I'm super interested in EdTech. Yeah.
Thank you. So for the online participants, you can just type in your about yourself and how you are interested in this topic. So this topic is about social networks in the learning community, and this actually has something related to the relationship. Relationship play an important role in the learning. It's actually connect the people, either your friends, the family members, or strangers, or connect the institutions, organizations together through certain type of relationship. And in the interaction with the people or with the institutions, you actually exchange the passive or explicit knowledge with each other. And so the social networks provide a tool through which people can build a relationship with each other and access to the knowledge as well as the social capital. So majority of the literature talk about the structure of the social networks within a group and how the structure can impact people's access to the available social resources. And in this study, I want to focus on how social networks impact learners' access to knowledge in the context of a learning community. And there are two research questions. The first is the factors which impact learners' access to the knowledge in the social networks. The second is about how does the learning community support adult learners to gain knowledge through various social networks. So we know the social networks is important in the knowledge management because it can help us to diagnose knowledge management in organizations. And it can identify the barriers that prevent knowledge flow in the organizations and see which part is blocked or which part is missing. And it can find out the knowledge flow across the boundaries in the organization. And through examining the structure of a social network, we can find out how people access knowledge and social resources within the networks. And through analyzing the mechanics of social networks, and we can identify how people mobilize the social resources in networks. So before we talk about the factors which influence people's access to knowledge, I want to briefly talk about some basic concept And this is especially important for the beginners who are not familiar with the social networks. And for some of you who are already been very familiar with this, and you probably can pass by this. So here you can see this actually is a very simple structure I created to just give us a basic concept of what is that about. Nodes, N-O-D-E-S. This is a concept which occurred frequently in the social network analysis. It refers to all these little balls, This refers to the entities or human beings and individuals, organizations, which want to connect with each other. And all these lines refer to, they are the links, or they are the ties which connect people, organization together. So these ties, here is an example of LinkedIn. And when you search people here, you put a people, search certain type of people. Based on the restrictions like locations or their companies, these people you search, they are here. They are like the individual people or organization. So this restriction or limitation, like locations, companies, they are the certain type of relationship which connect this organization or people together. So and then the weak ties and strong ties. Weak ties refer to the ties which connect people that you are not familiar with, like acquaintance, like how you, for example, this dotted lines. They are the weak ties. That means you connect with the people that you are not familiar with. Strong ties means these solid lines which connect people that you are familiar with, like your family members, your friends. So social network, they refer to the whole set of these lines and balls, they connect together. And so the shapes and the density, these are also very important concepts in the social network. The shape refer to the network properties such as the density, centrality, connectivity, and opportunities. Density refers to the high volume of interactions among learners in the network. The more density it has, the more interactions in the social networks. And here are two examples we find from Twitter. These are two journals. They post their journal information. You can see one have a very little interactions, one have a much more interactions, retweet, post, and likes. This shows the density of these two journals in the social media, and one has a less density and one has more density. So the more density it has, the more interactions you have, the more interested people are in this certain post. So the connectors. So the connector refer to those intermediaries who introduce two parties together. The most central nodes it is the most central nodes in a social network. They connect the majority of the members in a social network. So here, this number 2 here, it is a connector which connects the multiple people in this organization. And here you see in the LinkedIn, you can see that I have how many over 3 connections. So that means I connect with over 300 people. Also in the LinkedIn, you can see the second connection, third, and that means how far away people connect to the next people. Sometimes you are the first connector to the, for example, to your friend. However, for the strangers, you may through your friend or another friend, your friend's friend, to connect to the another person. That is shows the first, second, and third connectors. So the more connectors you have, the less close you are with another person, and vice versa. So in order to share the information, access to resources, the closer the connection is, the easier to access to the other people's knowledge. So, and is the brokers. Brokers means the somebody which connect different group or different parties of social networks. And here, in this picture, that orange, that number one is a broker. It actually connects two parties together or two organizations together. It is a central person which access to both parties, both organizations. It is a crucial, important intermediate person. And here's another example of a social service broker, which connect two different organizations together. And so in accessing or in sharing the knowledge, you need to identify who are the connectors, who are the brokers, because these two type of persons are very, very important. They play like a bridge to access to the different groups of knowledge. So the factors influencing the learning in social media, and we have introduced the two types of ties. One is strong ties, which exists between the familiar people like family and close friends, and the weak ties refer to the ties which connect to the strangers. And so the different types of ties impact the different types of knowledge learners can access. Numbers and learners and pathways in the network impact learners' position and opportunity in the social network. Members with a strong ties, they can easily share the homogeneous knowledge and access each other's resources due to the closeness. Homogeneous knowledge means knowledge that you are familiar with, knowledge which are very similar to your expertise, and then the weak tie means you access to the stranger, especially people from other fields. You access to the heterogeneous knowledge means knowledge that across the field, knowledge that you are not familiar with, and creativity usually happen between these weak ties when you exchange knowledge with each other. So the number and the learners of a pathway in the network reflect individual actors' positions, therefore their constraints and opportunities in the social network. The individual actors with many pathways and have short pathways to other actors, we have more opportunities to access the resources of other actors. So the social connection needs. So the more social connections you have, the more easy you can access to the wider range of knowledge. And however, it shows that more social networks do not necessarily lead to more resource or more opportunities. You need to find out the right networks that are suitable for you, and especially for the informal, non-professional networks. Some people have over 1,000 connections, but that does not necessarily give you the 1,000 opportunities you access to. So the social integration and isolation. Individuals' degree of social integration and isolation reflects the numbers of relationships we have with each other, and also reflects the frequency of interactions with each other. Socially isolated individuals usually have fewer interactions with others and fewer opportunities to gain useful information and resources. And the density of the ties. The teams with the dense ties tend to achieve their goals more than people who have sparse ties. That means less connections. So this study actually the base. I want to study the social networks within programs in the community in Shanghai. This is a community called Jing An community in Shanghai. And data collection method have interviews. I interviewed 20 participants who attended the learning programs in this community. And I also interviewed the administrators, researchers, and some leaders. And observation, I routinely observe their stores, restaurants, cultural centers, entertainment clubs, local residential apartment, and also local community centers. I also sit in their different meetings to just observe how they have how they make decisions And this because I want to know their routine daily life, what it look like, what kind of resources they have, what kind of networks they have, because this is a very a big project called lifelong learning system, and they create hundreds of learning cells or learning sites, so to allow people to access to these learning resources easily in the community. Document collection, I collect the policies, media reports, and official reports, and also some program introductions, and a program report, and annual plans report, and also some videos introducing the learning community in this in China, and also in this community. Data was analyzed through the inductive analysis method. So through the interview learners, I interview their learning experience and their use of the networks in the learning community. And through observations, I want to find out the local resources available to them. And the document collection, I want to find out how activities and resources in the community were supported by the policy and the community, local communities. So here are some maps. The very left side is the map of Shanghai in China, and then the second map, it shows the Jing An District. So I actually studied this orange part of Jing An, that is the north and middle, not this red part. And the right side, you can see they have a different, they call it street. Street actually is in Chinese word, it's like a geographical areas. They have different geographical areas. So the very right side, they labeled all these learning cells on the map to show how many learning cells we created in this, in this community. So here are some pictures about the how they have the learning activities happen. The first shows some example. The first picture shows the local citizens. They are learning female AIDS prevention in their district. And the second and the third shows how the local community integrates the historical heritage into their learning activities. And the findings, the findings, this study shows that supported by the government, the hierarchical and non-hierarchical networks were formed to collaboratively support the lifelong learning environment in this district. And these networks, which connect with educational institutions, communities, industry, and employment market, those kind of network guarantee that local people could easily access to the learning resources they need easily. So here you can see the government play a very crucial role in here, and they support the education bureau in the community to develop different learning activities through schools and community schools for the purpose of learning development. And then the community, they developed the learning activities for the citizens through learning centers and different learning sites for the purpose of community development. Then the organizations, in like companies and the business centers, they created the learning activities for their citizens, for their employees in the organization. And their purpose is all mainly for the business development. These multiple networks were created among the educational, non-educational, and community organizations, through which the learner resources from social units such as the hospitals, cultural centers, schools, companies, they were open to their citizens. So there are location-based networks in the community were created, and those location-based networks mainly created for different groups of people who live in the community so that they can access to a variety of resources. For example, the migrant workers. When the migrant workers, they first came into Shanghai, they need to, the residential community, they actually follow these migrant workers and record their document, their information, and find out whether they have the ability to find a job or not. If they still need some skill training, then they will refer to the community schools to have some training. And if they are qualified to find a job, then they were sent to the labor office. And the unemployed workers, and they also were followed by the residential community, and they either refer to the community school or refer to the employers to find a job. And then another example is for the older people who retired. And those people, they have quite a lot of networks created based on their the friendship, house, or their interest. And they also refer to the residential communities to go to the different learning schools, learning sites, and professional associations. And so all of these resources from each of these social units were accessible to the local people. So here you can see all these different groups and networks, they were accessed through the residential community. So here, this middle, if we put into an abstract way, you could see the residential community play a crucial role. It was accessed by the different groups of networks. So it is a broker in this social network. And then the organization-based networks also created, these kind of networks mainly created within the organizations and institutions by themselves. For example, the network for the leaders, a network for the white-collar workers, and leaders, because they have much more power and their position is higher, that's why they can access to a much broader networks through the different system like union system, party affairs system. They also access through the placement system and other organizations. And white-collar workers, they were provided internal professional networks and external professional networks. And through this, especially the internal networks, they could integrate their work-related practice into a knowledge-sharing opportunities. So, however, these different networks, even though they were supported and highly integrated into the evaluation system by the government, however, they are not balanced. Some networks are dense and some networks are sparse. And for example, and go back to the previous one. For example, the network for the migrant workers, because their families are not in the Shanghai, they're in different provinces, and they barely have individual networks, they barely have networks in the professional field either. It's the same for the unemployed workers. Unemployed workers, their strong tie is there because they have families there, but they have a weak tie with other people. And but for the leaders, because they have a higher position, they have power, they have much more much more opportunities to access to other resources, they have much more networks. So for the white-collar workers, however, even though they have the within or cross professional networks, but because they are very busy, they barely have their personal or individual networks. So conclusion discussion. This study shows that we analyze the social network is crucial, important because it can help us to identify the relationship within the groups and sites and find out the gaps, silos, and the change in the relationship and identify the key people in the social process. And for example, in this study, the key people is the people who play a role in the residential community because it is accessed by the different groups of people. And it also shows the networks within and across organizations. They are not balanced. A network within the organization, they are very active because all these learning activities within the networks, they actually are integrated into their evaluation system. So the leaders within the organizations, they have to work very hard to provide different resources, open to the resources to the community, offer the learning activities to the community, because all these activities are integrated into their evaluation report at the end of the year. And that's why they are very active. However, across the organizations, like the power companies and the companies, water companies, the employees within these two different types of organizations, they don't really have active interactions with each other. And also, it is important to identify the important players in this study. For example, the residential community, they play a broker's role, like this pink color, the number one, they connect to the different groups of people, and connectors such as older people, the retired. You may be surprised why they play such an important role, because there are different programs offered in the community, and those retired people, they actually attended these different learning activities. When those people, like migrant people, they don't have so many resources, they cannot access to other networks, then they know these older people help them to access to that. That's why they play a very important role. And it also shows that the less power you have, the less networks you have, like leaders, they have more power, they have better social positions, and therefore they access more resources. Unlike the leaders, like unemployed workers or migrant workers, they barely have their personal networks, especially the networks in the professional field. And also it shows the network across the field is not active. And it is also important to utilize the important players in the community, like the brokers or connectors, identify who are the brokers, who are the connectors. So, and also, as we talk about in the social network, relationships play an important role. And through what kind of relationship you build connections with others. Some are through, for example, we are in the same institution, or some are through, like we graduated with the same university, or some we live in the same community, okay, or we are in the same race group. That's how people build connections, and through these connections, they create networks. However, in this study, it shows the physical location is an important gateway in the social network. For example, in the migrant workers, they want to learn the fishing skills, about how to step into the fishing business, because that's make more money than doing cleaning job. However, they found out it is very difficult to access to the fishing business, because this fishing business, they are controlled by the group of people from one province. They only accept the members from the same province, not the members from other province. So that therefore they cannot access to this type of a business because of the physical location as a limitation. And it shows that, even though sometimes you cannot access to one type of social network, but you can jump over the blocks through informal ties. For example, in the case of this migrant cannot access to the fisher business. However, they can access that through older people in the community, and through their introduction, they can access to these networks. And this kind of a relationship they build with older people is through the informal connections with them, or also learning opportunities together with them. So between group ties, they play a various roles. In this study, for example, the between group ties, like the brokers and connectors, and the broker, like the people in the residential community, they play a very important role. And it is important to identify them. It is literature shows that the bilingual ties, those people, they usually are familiar with both parties. They have expertise in both parties. This study shows that you don't need to be the experts in both parties, but they play administrative roles. They are familiar with both parties. So, and more networks do not necessarily lead to more advanced knowledge acquisition. Like, in the Facebook, some people have over 1,900 connections. But does that mean that they access much more resources? Not necessarily. It really depends on the purpose of networks. And so recommendations based on this study, we create maps showing the structure of the social networks and the various networks that citizens can use at each stage of their life. And in this study, even though it's a part of a lifelong learning system, that all these resources are available to the local citizens. However, a lot of them, especially the migrant workers, they could not even they do not even know this information available, because this information did not really promoted through the networks that they locate. And that's why you need to put this information in the place where they can access through their own networks. And you can put the networks through email lists, through neighborhood online networks, through neighborhood newsletters, and through local real estate companies and blackboard and residential building. And when they step out their building, they can see that, oh, here's the information there. Another information, like, we sometimes have important house-related information, we can put in the wall box, like on some kind of ball. People go shopping every day, no matter where you are. That's where the information can be accessed. And provide incentives at any conference hosted by the industry association to motivate a cross-field knowledge exchange. And we can identify the brokers and in-between people who know community background and context knowledge of different networks, and who know the flow of various networks. These people are crucial. I have a friend, she have a lot of the connections. I know a lot of people through her networks. So she's actually crucial, important connectors in this social network. So then we collaborate with the culture centers to provide people with few networks, some informal social activities such as friend meetup parties and hometown people gatherings, tea time for information sharing, to help people to increase their circles of networks and make connections with other networks. So a lot of times, if you cannot access to certain organizations or certain resources through formal organization, like for example, we access to a lot of information through our conference. These are formal, membership-related organization. But for a lot of people in a disadvantaged situation, they don't have this kind of like a membership-related networks, because this is a paid membership. Then you could just through the informal ties, informal opportunities provided to them so that they can access information. We can collaborate with various employers to provide workshops about how to explore the social resources, how to connect to the interest groups, and where to get the needed support. And we can host the training workshops about how to transition to other relationships in order to access knowledge blocked by some specialized restrictions, and change from the professional roles to the social roles and connect with other connectors if people cannot directly access to the work-related social networks. And like in that example I showed, the migrant worker cannot access to the fishing business through the formal, through their own networks. Then we can provide the training, formal or informal training activity to show them the skills of how to do the fishing business. And then more networks do not necessarily lead to more resources. We need to identify the right social networks that match your need and interest. I think that's all. And this paper actually published in the journal, International Journal of Virtual and Personal Learning Environment. And if you are interested, you can access it through my research gate. So thank you so much. If you have questions.